What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here alongside Josh Davis. Welcome to the Wednesday Link Live. 30 minutes late tonight, but we're going to have the same full-length, hour-long show, answering questions and going over a very interesting past 2 weeks in Philadelphia, Josh. And, of course, we just saw you in person, which was fantastic this past weekend in Dallas, minus the actual Dallas Cowboy loss. But this is a very, very odd past 2 weeks in Philadelphia land. I can't remember a more disjointed 2 weeks in recent Eagle history. Can you?
I'm not sure that I can. That's a good question, and it is great to see you back virtually. It was awesome having you here at the house, like you say. That the best part was hanging out. I was hoping the best part would be, celebrating the Eagles win. That didn't happen, so it was great. We had a blast outside of, like you say, walking out of AT&T Stadium. And I'm not gonna lie, that's the first time that I have experienced a loss wearing the Eagles gear. So that was a new one for me.
Yeah.
I don't know though. To your question, I mean, it's such a strange, odd, I don't even know how to describe it, because it's like on one hand, and you've done shows about this, I've done shows about this, we've talked about it a number of times, but it's like we're sitting here at 10-3, and we somewhat, I mean, for the most part, control our destiny. I know that the Niners kind of do, because in the first spot, but I mean, there's a lot to win out here for, right? I mean, we control the destiny in the sense of the division, the number 2 seed at I guess best or worst in that scenario. But there's a lot to play for, yet like we've seen, and the numbers are continuing to add up, there's a lot that needs to be fixed. And it's just weird because, again, it's like optically, if I were to tell you, and you've mentioned it several times too, of just saying like, hey, if I told you we got 10 wins coming out of the gauntlet, like right where we're going into Seattle with 10 wins, would you take it? Heck yeah, I would. Like there's without a doubt I would take that before the season. But again, you look at how we've gotten there and the stats and kind of things that are a little bit more behind the scenes or under the radar, or just like, well, you got the wins, but was it lucky? Was it fortunate? Was it whatever you want to call it? And I mean, a little bit. So yeah, there's a little concern. It is a strange past couple weeks, and I have no clue what we're in for. I hope it's some good changes because we need it. But yeah, it's really hard to even describe where we're at right now.
We'll talk about the possibility of Frank Reich here in just a second. Welcome in a bunch of people watching us as well, including, Lino Diaz, Sharif Jones, Mark Brandis, Xavier Ragland checking in as well. Make sure you guys hit the thumbs up button as we're going to be live for the next hour.
Everybody?
And so it'd be great if you guys hit the thumbs up button. More people can find the live show. I'll be honest, Josh, I was a big anti Brian Johnson and Sean Desai guy the past couple of weeks, and I think rightfully so, because a lot of people have kind of channeled their anger for the offensive struggles into play calling, and then, of course, the defensive struggles into play calling and scheme, right? Those are the big kind of boo-hoo catchphrase words right now in Philadelphia. I'm not a big film guy. I think casual viewers who weren't NFL coaches or players who try to break down film normally are, what's the right word? They aren't as accurate as you would like to think. But watching other people who played the game break down the Eagles film has been fascinating to me the past 2 days. I've watched a lot of it. I've watched a lot of different people break it down. And I'll be honest with you, I think it's more players not executing than it is coaches putting the players in bad situations. Now, is it a combination of both? Yes, 100%. Brian Johnson is not, Kyle Shanahan right now. The Eagles have the lowest usage of pre-snap motion in the league, which to me is a fireable offense. It's ridiculous. But there are a lot of plays early in that Cowboy game where, and this is not just fumbles, because those red or air are obviously players and not the whole execution of things, where Jalen Hurts is missing people. Jalen Hurts has people open. People need to get the ball thrown to them on short crossing routes versus taking deep shots to A.J. Brown over his back shoulder. Hurts isn't doing it. This is an anti-Hurts rant. The players themselves are not executing, and the game plan, to me, seems to be a lot stronger than people realize. And Jordan Mailata tipped my hat to this today, and I did it on my show. He went all out and defended Brian Johnson. Said Johnson is learning, getting better, and fixing his mistakes week after week. And he saw a lot of problems in the Niner game. He fixed them in the Cowboy game, and the Eagles didn't execute. And so while we want to sit back and bash the coordinators, and rightfully so, They're not perfect, I've been shocked at how poor of execution, especially the offense, has been really the past 2 weeks against really good football teams.
It is completely shocking because, we're sitting here and the turnover differential is 24th, right? I mean, this is a team that you would expect as, I don't know, as buttoned up, as focused coming into the year. Hey, we've got a mission. We're trying to get back to the Super Bowl. And yeah, I mean, every team has that mission, but I mean, you come away from it going like, as we're moving into this in the off season, going to the preseason, the regular season, it's like, hey, we're going to be rock solid. Like there may be a few things here, but as far as player execution, that wouldn't be the concern. And you're right. I mean, you sit there and you look at it. If if Jalen doesn't fumble on that opening drive, I mean, they were
Points.
moving the football. Like
Yeah.
they converted a 3rd and 16. Like there's a definite chance. Now I know we've had some issues because it's not all on one, but if you want to say that one game with the Cowboys, hey, you turn the football over. Next thing you know, A.J. Brown has a fumble as well. Later in the game, Devontae Smith, the game was probably out of reach at that point, but still you got your main playmakers that the offensive coordinator, Brian Johnson, Sirianni, whoever it is, the game plan is clearly to get it to your playmakers. And I said it too. It's like, I don't have a problem with that necessarily. Now, here's the one thing. The one part that I do have a little bit of an issue is Sirianni, and maybe he kind of mixed his words up here, wasn't fully meaning it, but it was, we're going through those 3. And that's it. Like, it's basically, those are the guys. Now, I'm okay with that, but it comes off the impression, and I saw a lot of comments on this, and I think you have to temper it somewhat, because I don't feel like it was, hey, we only go to those 3. We're really not trying to get anyone else involved. You take your spots. You pick your spots. But sometimes that can come across as, well, it's those 3, and that's it. Like, that's the only game plan. And at times, based on some others, I've seen the same film progression too, and like you're talking about the execution, it's scheming your playmakers to get open, and then everyone else, it's just kind of like, well, good luck. And they don't necessarily need as much of the scheming because they're the playmakers that they are. So, it goes on both sides. But I agree. I mean, there's been a lack of execution. Players haven't been making plays. Kevin Byard has been, I mean, however drastic you want to get. We could say he's been awful. You could say he's been bad. You could say he's been less than ideal, wherever you want to go PC wise. But like, he's not lived up to the expectations. And I know there was frustration with Desai. The question that I have for you too, and actually let me get a shout out real quick, because I saw Oscar earlier. Oscar says, Oscar here, Eagles fan from Cali, hoping for a shout out to all of us fans in the West. So there you go, Oscar.
West Coast, there you go.
The question I have for you though is, so we see and hear the press conferences, Brian Johnson, Sean Desai, all the talk, after these couple losses, the talk from the players seems to be, and we both did shows on it as well, but the offense is too predictable, right? So the players saying that about Brian Johnson, but the defense feels to be, or maybe the speculation is that it's too confusing, because Slay said the comment of, we just got to get there and play ball. Like, it shouldn't be too hard to get the communication in. We got to get on the same page, just line up and play ball. And Byard said, hey, I don't know what the deal is, whether it was a check that happened, but not sure why we resorted back to zone and doing all these other facets in the defense. So we could talk about execution on the players, but I would have felt like it'd be the reverse of that, because coming in, you're saying, hey, you got all your offensive playmakers that are returning basically, and you have the defense that's a lot of new guys, but it's kind of the reverse. Is there any concern? I totally agree with you on the execution, but is there any concern of like, what in the world are we doing here if you've got players and vets like Slay, like Byard on the defensive side saying it's too confusing, it's too in depth? I don't know what it is, but any concern there?
Well, there's lots to unpack, right? Sean Desai said today, and he confirmed it, which was rumors that we had heard, that it was too confusing and that they were dumbing things down. So he's confirmed straight up today. Listen on my show earlier. He literally says, we are dumbing things down to try to get better at the simple things and get off the field on 3rd down, because they're one of the worst teams in the National Football League on 3rd down. Philadelphia, though, has talent on defense. They shouldn't be this bad. So you can blame scheme, and scheme is obviously one part of it, especially on the defensive side, but they don't have anybody in the middle who can cover on this football team. Anybody. As soon as you lose Avonte Maddox, they have been scrambling ever since that injury to fill the nickel cornerback slot, and they can't find it. Eli Ricks flashed for like 5 snaps early on in the year, and we all kind of just proclaimed him to be, including myself, the greatest, undrafted free agent cornerback of all time. He's been getting work. Bradley Roby is old and washed. He's been getting work. James Bradbury got worked against the Dallas Cowboys. Now, he did well on one-on-one with CeeDee Lamb, but overall, Bradbury moved outside. He moved inside. He got work. The one player on defense in the secondary who's playing good football all around right now is Darius Slay. And Darius Slay gets ripped for the off-field antics where he seems, disinterested in winning and kind of cocky on his podcast and more me than team. But the stats say that he has been the only good defensive player in coverage this entire season. Blankenship is a good player. He's diagnosing things correctly and saving a lot of touchdowns with his tackling. He's not great in coverage. Byard's been atrocious. He's been worse statistically and really overall rating-wise than Kayvon Wallace was before he was let go in Philadelphia. He's been terrible. And so when you look at the offense and the defense in a long-winded answer, the defense has coaching issues, but the coaching cannot, for whatever reason, overcome the loss of Avonte Maddox, and it's been killing them. Offensively, they're scheming up open players. Go watch Dan Orlovsky break down 3 plays, just 3 plays from the Dallas Cowboy game this past Sunday, and I'm sure you watched that whole entire breakdown. Those are well-designed plays with wide open players, and Jalen Hurts is not throwing the football to them at all. He's looking at them and pulling the ball down. And for whatever reason, Jalen Hurts is not playing better or playing as good as he did last year. Now, is he much worse? No. But his level was here in 2022. It's here in 2023. And that gap right there has been a big enough difference to make Philadelphia lose the most recent 2 games, especially from an offensive perspective. I think that the whole entire issue right now is we want 2 people to blame. Desai and Brian Johnson. And that's it. Nobody else is to blame. Offensively, it's a lot less Brian Johnson and a lot more Sirianni and Jalen Hurts struggling. And defensively, it is some of Sean Desai, but it's a lot more the fact that whoever they have in the secondary cannot cover worth a damn besides Darius Slay, and they have been unable to scheme around it and protect their players because they are getting worked up and down the field. And I don't know if Desai can just fix it by calling more blitzes or calling more zones or calling more mans. I really don't know. It's rough right now defensively.
It is. It's very rough. And that's the question. I mean, I'm hopeful. I want to try to be optimistic. I want to try to say like, hey, this is fixable. Maybe we can do something to help. I don't know what it is, but I'm with you. And Xavier Ragland's here says, give Byard some slack. He's only played a few games with us. I'm
Not
sorry.
anymore.
I disagree.
Not anymore.
He's played more than enough games. Like if he's a I don't know, a random rookie or a random guy that we picked up off the street, like even then I'm like, yeah, this is probably played enough. But this is an all-pro vet who knows he needs to be playing better, and he's not. He's not picking it up. So yes, there's maybe dumb it down, make it more simpler from the defensive side. But they got to play better. But let's talk about the defensive line. I mean, this is a group, right, that we're said, hey, they're probably not going to get to 70 sacks. Like, I didn't think we're going to get to 70 sacks, but this should still be a top premier defensive line. And the pressures are not there. Obviously, the sacks are not there. It's middle rate at best. And I understand Josh Sweat being upset, but it's kind of like, hey, he's talking about the size scheme somewhat, but it's also, hey, when I get a pressure, I'm used to guys being there in the gap to be able to help support. And right now, the pass rush is undisciplined. I mean, how many times do we see all of a sudden it's like, oh, a little bit of pressure. Oh, quarterback can step up into the pocket. Quarterback can run out to the left. Quarterback can go back out right. And all of a sudden, there's a 3rd and 17 that you convert. And it's like, well, how many of those do we see? And to me, I'm just like, you got to be able to get it fixed. And I'm with you on the players. Fletcher Cox was saying, hey, we're good once we get them behind the sticks. You're not. I would disagree with that. Like I talked about it on my show. Like, you're not good when you get behind the sticks. We talk about it all the time. There's a reason you're dead last in 3rd down conversion or 3rd down defense. So it's a lot of things. I'm with you. It's easy and it's not like they don't deserve any blame. Desai does and Brian Johnson does. Of course. But it's just as much on the players, I feel like, certainly these last couple of weeks, because I saw the segment with Dan Orlovsky. I've seen a couple others as well. And, I hope that this is the wake-up call. Maybe it is. The hard part is it's so late in the season. Like if this had happened in week 5, week 6, something like that, then we could go, all right, well, I'm not feeling great, but at least we have a lot more time now. But the fact that it's late in the season here, I'm like, can we expect we don't need a massive turnaround. It's a massive turnaround in terms of keeping hold of the football, not turning the football over. Yeah. And get off the field a little bit more on 3rd down. I mean, this offense is going to be the one to carry you. I think that we have to just realize that and come to terms with it, whether you were hoping or thinking, hey, maybe the defense can be the one. Desai's made some adjustments in second halves, but this offense is going to have to be the team to carry you. We're going to have to be the Chiefs like last season, where you say, hey, defense, get us like 2 stops, get us just enough, limit the points, maybe a field goal, and we're just going to have to get touchdowns most of the time. And I don't know. I'm wondering, can they come up with a game plan? Because I do feel like, there's something with the first halves, and it's on Jalen, but there's also what is it with the game plan? What is it with the scheme? Because too many times we're like, well, hey, here you go. We're what is it? Last 4 weeks, 6.5 points average in the first half. Yeah. I'm sorry, like we're not the Carolina Panthers. We're the Eagles with all Pro Bowl talent just about everywhere. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm hopeful that we see it, but the offense, they got to get going. They really do, because you can't ask the defense to play the number of snaps they played, especially the last 4 weeks.
Well, there's a couple of thoughts here. One, I don't think the sky's falling, and being critical does not mean you think the sky's falling. You read your comment section, you'd think that the Eagles were 3-10 instead of 10-3. I would bet an enormous amount of money that Philadelphia will win their next 4 games. They will be the number 1 seed, and we will be sitting there the second week of playoffs getting ready for either, the Dallas Cowboys are getting ready for maybe the Los Angeles Rams or one of these other, lower seeded football teams, because the Eagles' schedule is very easy. They have very favorable matchups with these Final Four teams, and the 49ers and Dallas Cowboys both have 2. The Cowboys have 3, but the Niners have 2 tough games left, and the Cowboys have 3 tough games left, and there's a 0% chance either of those football teams go undefeated, right? So the Eagles are going to be the 1 seed, in my opinion. I feel very confident about that. They're for sure winning the NFC East based on the Cowboys' next 3 games, okay? I don't think the sky's falling. My problem right now is that the playing that we should expect from the players you have on the field has been, the past 2 weeks, dramatically below where it's at. You mentioned the defensive line. This entire offseason, the whole plan was replace Javon Hargrave with younger, cheaper, and better players. And for the first couple of games of the year, we had done that. Jordan Davis was balling out. Jalen Carter was Defensive Rookie of the Year. Milton Williams was getting involved. Since about week, 10, Jalen Carter has been non-existent. I know he had a fumble recovery, but right place, right time. Anyone could have done that being in the right place. He was the lowest graded Eagle defensive player with a 29 PFF grade on Sunday night against the Dallas Cowboys. 29. I mean, Slay was the highest at 89. The lowest was Jalen Carter at 29. Carter's been non-existent. Is he going to be a great player? Yes. He's in a slump. Rookies have slumps, but I'm just telling you, that's a fact. Milton Williams has been non-existent. Marlon Tuloti Potu, I always mess up his name. He's been better than Milton Williams the past couple of weeks. And Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham are too old. I mean, it's just a fact. Cox is still a good player. Brandon Graham is still a good player, but they're good players for spurts. Age slows you down in terms of your ability to sustain energy through 4 quarters of football, hence why they rotate the defensive line as often as they do. That's the first thing we got to understand. This defensive line was supposed to be younger, better, faster, especially in the middle, and they've not lived up to that the past couple of weeks. And like you mentioned, whenever Reddick and Sweat are getting around the outside, instead of stepping up into the waiting arms of a defensive tackle and getting sacked, most quarterbacks have stepped up into nobody and then been able to shred the defense because the secondary is as bad as we already talked about, right? That's the first part.
Yeah.
When we talk about overall scheme, though, I'm really starting to wonder if Sirianni is more of an issue than Brian Johnson, because it makes you it's hard for me to go, okay, Brian Johnson was the quarterback's coach last year, heavily involved in the offensive play calls. He wasn't calling them, but heavily involved in what they're designing, because he's telling Shane Steichen what Jalen Hurts likes, because he's spending the most time out of all the coaching staff with Jalen Hurts, right? So if anyone's telling, hey, Hurts loves this, Hurts would tell Brian Johnson. So the idea that Brian Johnson now no longer does things that Jalen Hurts likes makes no sense. What I go back to is 2011 Nick Sirianni. What did he do before he gave up play calling? Threw the football too much, didn't run the football at all, and they were terrible on opening drives. What is the Philadelphia Eagles offense this year without Shane Steichen calling plays? Terrible running the football.
It's the exact same.
Throwing the football too much, and then doing exactly what we just said there, and that is not doing well, scoring on opening drives the past couple of weeks. I do wonder if Sirianni is a little bit more involved than we would think, and by being involved, I mean he's kind of saying my way or the highway and making guys like Brian Johnson fall in line. That's my big wonder. And the thing is, they've hinted about this, Josh. I mean, they've literally hinted. Dave Spadaro spilled the beans a couple of weeks ago on his Ask Me Anything. Yeah. He said he's more involved than you would think. Brian Johnson is more just a puppet's not the right word, but, goes along
you can
with
call
what he's
him
supposed
that.
to do.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that analogy. Yes, I agree. I think that was the concern, because we talked about it a little bit even in the offseason. I remember we're like, hey, I can understand Brian Johnson feels like a good move, familiarity with Jalen. He's going to be new first-year coordinator, but it's like, hey, it should be okay, because he's not having to, come in with an offense that's not proven, players that can't make plays, all that. But yeah, it's like you get the confirmation and say, well, this looks an awfully a lot of like Nick Sirianni's offense in 21, because it does. And I mean, I don't know, everybody just think about your regular day jobs. Like, how good do you do when your boss is over your shoulder and just being like micromanaged to death? Like I'm a train wreck. So if Brian Johnson is sitting there going, oh, okay, so you're giving me these 3 plays. It's like we're playing Madden. It's Ask Madden, give me these 3 plays. Okay, I could choose these in this position, and that's it. Like, what's he supposed to do? Because it's going based on Sirianni. He's going to give him the play call, the general rough estimate of a play call, and you can almost guarantee yourself he's more of the scheme put in or the game plan for every week. Yeah. So, I know that Sirianni, he likes control. It's not a secret. He likes to be involved. He's a very offensive minded coach, but I think this is very much of, you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, you know what, even though Brian Johnson is a first-year OC and it may seem like it's crazy, I would just be curious to know, and I do think that is Sirianni very heavily involved. I would say, you know what? these last several weeks, give Brian Johnson the full, complete control. Back off completely. Say, you call whatever you want. You scheme up whatever you want, whatever feels the best. And if after those weeks, all of a sudden we're sitting there like, well, we lost the division, we're definitely not 1 or 2 seed now. You know what? You at least kind of have an answer, because right now it's not working. It's not working with what Sirianni comes up to. And you're really not allowing Brian Johnson to grow to the full potential. So as much flack and fire Brian Johnson as we give him, I'm with you. And I said it on my show yesterday too. It's like, I'm just questioning, because I really don't think it's a fair assessment to just go, hey, offense is bad. Of course, it's Brian Johnson and first-year OC. There's going to be struggles, no doubt. But there's too many similarities, like you just said, about the Sirianni offenses, that there's a lot of this with Sirianni flavor, and it just needs to be changed. I would say, what's the worst you could do, right? And what are you going to lose? At this point, with what we've seen in the offense, I'd be okay.
Well, and again, we're not saying the sky's falling. I'm not saying you fire Nick Sirianni if they don't win a Super Bowl this year.
No.
I'm saying that there's clearly been a pattern of offensive struggles when Sirianni has been more in charge than Shane Steichen, and it's up to Sirianni, Brian Johnson, or whoever else advises him, whoever has the ear of the head coach, whether it's Howie Roseman, whether it's Jeffrey Lurie, to point these things out and make sure, at the very least, Sirianni is aware of these things and can do some self-reflecting, because you mentioned bosses being over your shoulder. Some of the worst bosses are bosses who don't self-reflect, who don't see the error of their own ways. And if Sirianni is one of those type of people, which we don't know, I've never met the guy, maybe he's great, maybe he's not, I don't know. But if he can't self-reflect and go, maybe I am being a little overbearing when it comes to Brian Johnson and, implementing the game plan on a Wednesday afternoon. If he can't see that, then the Eagles are going to have more struggles and more troubles like this, which brings us to the Frank Reich situation, which we'll mention in a second. Let's get D-Dragon Super Chat here. What up, man? Past 2 weeks felt like 2 months. That's true. Hard for me to get excited for Monday night. I'm excited for Monday night because they should blow out the Seattle Seahawks. They should win by 15 plus points. I do. Very confident that they're going to blow.
You think they're actually going to do that?
I do. I genuinely
you are?
do.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I mean, Vegas has them at what, 4.5 point favorites? They're going to beat the Seattle Seahawks. Drew Lock, Geno Smith, it doesn't matter. They will win that game, or else all hell's going to break loose. They're going to win that game.
I hope so. The only thing that I keep coming back to, and maybe this, to your point of Vegas having it at 4.5, so maybe that should be the telling sign, is it's been, 7 years, 8 years?
It's been a long time.
It's been a while since we've won in Seattle.
Yeah.
So that's the only, or not 8 years, I guess 8 games, 7 or 8 games since been like 2008, something like that.
Long time.
So yeah, we need to. This is one that, I mean, coming off these last couple games, it needs to be a controlling game. I hate it's literally, I mean, all of us know this, but because we've lived through it and we've survived through it, but it's like, it's either the Eagles are going to win by heart attack, or, I mean, I guess with the exception kind of the Jets game, but or we've been just blown out and obliterated. So can we get one where we're on the other side? Just control it from start to finish. Nice, easy. Hey, great. We're happy. Things are a little bit better or much better in that situation. I don't know, but there's still, I guess, after the past couple of weeks of what we've seen, I'm tempering expectations a little bit. I do think that we win, but I almost need them to just do it to prove it to me before I can say like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to win by 10, 15 points. I would love it though. That'd be great.
I think it's going to happen. I think 15 plus. I think it's their best win of the season, and I think Tuesday morning we're a lot happier about where Philadelphia is at. But that doesn't mean they still can't make changes, and that's the whole Frank Reich situation. I broke this down on my show, and you mentioned it yesterday. I did it 2 days ago. I know that Nick Sirianni has basically shot down the idea of bringing in Frank Reich. Frank Reich would be a welcomed help to this Eagle offense, and it's the exact reason for what Donnell Shipley just super chatted. Just watch the Dan breakdown. I get the problem I have with the O is they don't run the ball to set up the offense. For as many flaws as Frank Reich had with the Carolina Panthers, and apparently there were a lot because the owners did not like him. Dave Tepper was not a Frank Reich fan, and he's had problems the past 2 places he's been. What was the one thing Frank Reich did really, really well when he was in Philadelphia? He was adapt the offense to run an RPO-style system and get Nick Foles to throw the football as quickly as possible when he wasn't already handing it off. And now they have somebody who's 80 times better than Nick Foles at running the RPO in Jaylen Hurts, who proved he's the best RPO quarterback in the league last year because they ran it so darn much, and he's a better thrower of the football than Lamar Jackson, who's also great at it. And what do this year? They don't run any RPOs at all. And so when talking about stubbornness, talking about Nick Sirianni, they claim they do, they don't. They really don't. We need to just sit back and count how many RPOs they actually run a game because it's a lot of zone reads, not a lot of passes off of those zone reads, right? In comes Frank Reich. If they were to bring him in, he's at least mentioning this, right? He's at least getting in the ear of Sirianni, who Sirianni loves and respects him. We know that. And saying, hey, Nick, try this. Because Donnell's right. If they start running the football effectively, they can blow teams out. They can obliterate people. Early in the year when they were playing well against the Vikings and playing well against the Bucs and they were looking like the 2022 Eagles, they were running the football down your throat and then popping you over the top whenever you came in and gave them one-on-one opportunities, and they've gotten away from that. And again, it goes to play calling and scheming and execution and all the issues we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I'm with it. It's one of those that I understand the criticism. I understand the, hey, Frank Reich, if he were to come in here in any capacity, it's not going to be what's going to happen, right? Is it going to be a big change? Is it going to help? Is it going to be, because certainly, like you said, I mean, with Carolina, with Indianapolis, there were a lot of things there, with concerns, and he certainly lost the locker room. So that would be the only, I guess maybe not the only, but the immediate concern or thought is, don't like whenever a guy has the losing the locker room, which has happened in both places in Carolina and Indianapolis. And I happen to have a referee friend who used to do the camps for Indianapolis, who can kind of confirm that, Reich's not the most likable guy. So again, he's a referee. So I guess you could also make the counterpoint to that, like who likes referees, but still it's like he's done Shane Steichens and he's like, it's day and night different. He's not a Steichen in my mind, but at the same time, he's a consultant. So he's not really coming in to impact the locker room culture. He's kind of a 30,000 foot view. Here's what's going on. I'm going to provide some insight.
Yeah.
Help it with possibility of a game plan. So, I don't think it would necessarily hurt. Now, do I actually think that it's going to happen? I don't think at all. I don't think there's any chance. I mean, Sirianni kind of doubled down on that with the, hey, I like who we have here. I've seen some rumors. I don't know if this is true or just speculation. I've seen rumors that Sirianni did reach out to Reich, and his Reich's family, or I guess his wife or something, was like, no, you need to take the season off. That may be totally made up, but I've seen rumors of that. So again, either way, even if that's not true, I still don't think it's going to happen, because it feels like as much as maybe Sirianni doesn't want to give BJ full control, that would seem like the I don't know, just complete overstep and say, hey, you know what, you're the OC by like title, but that's about it. Like, you're not really going to do much at this point, because I think that he's taken so much control already. So I don't know. We'll see. I doubt they do it, but again, I wouldn't think that it would hurt at this point, because like you mentioned, all the reasons for the scheme, to play design, and we got to get back to, I hope that we do. I mean, they said run the football, and in my mind, whenever they said run the football, I'm thinking like, great, can we get some like RPOs? Because I don't want you just run the football to run the football. Like, we need to be effective here, and so far we haven't seen it. And with it being this late into the season, I'm like, are we going to see that big of a change? I don't know. I don't really think so. What do you think about, let me ask you this too, because and we've talked about it a couple times, both on shows and just while you were here in Dallas, but locker room culture is obviously very big. Morale, team aspect and all this other stuff. But we hear the reports of Derek Gunn getting texted by, who knows who these players are. We can guess, we can make speculations of who they might be, but of Brian Johnson's, offense being too predictable, or maybe it's Sirianni, whoever's it is. And we've got Josh Sweat, who's apparently so frustrated and upset that he pulls a reporter to the offensive side of the locker room to tell him about the frustrations of the defense. And we've got numerous other reports too of being really frustrated and either kind of finger pointing, kind of calling guys out, kind of voicing all these frustrations. This is a 10-3 team. But again, for all the reasons we mentioned, along with the locker room culture and morale, it doesn't feel like it. Should there be an extra level of, I know Jaylen Hurts and Brandon Graham kind of had a rah-rah meeting with the team to hopefully get this under wraps. And I am hopeful, but does it feel like this is, I don't know, a locker room culture issue too, of this is already trending in the wrong direction with the play calling, but how much of a concern is it when we're talking about the players are, they're acting like we're in jeopardy of missing the playoffs, really. I mean, I can understand it, but that's where they're at.
Well, the locker room stuff is interesting, right? Because here I am talking about how, the players have to play better, and they do. And yet the players seemingly are pushing back and saying, well, the play calling is too predictable. And, the offense takes too long for routes to develop. And, the defense can't get any pressure. And like all the things that you just mentioned. I do think there are some issues there, or else Brandon Graham and Jalen Hurts would not have had a rah-rah today before their lift, which was mentioned by Jordan Mailata, on 94.1 WIP today, saying, hey, it was pretty spirited. But Jordan Mailata also, right after that, said, This is a very open locker room, a locker room that talks, a locker room that is not afraid to go to coaches and express their frustrations, especially on the offense. And so part of me goes, it's much to do about nothing. But I think people are frustrated because of the emotions of the past 2 weeks. We got to realize who they lost to, right? The San Francisco 49ers cried all offseason long about losing in the NFC Championship game and how if we just had Brock Purdy, we would have won the game, and the Eagles are actually frauds. And Philadelphia got whipped in that game. And the 49ers made it look like they were right all offseason long. That if Brock Purdy had been healthy, it's not 31-7 in the NFC title game. It's much, much closer. And then you play the Dallas Cowboys, who you've beaten, which is great. But again, there were some odd plays in that one. Dak steps out. Jake Ferguson drops the pass. Could it have been different? And the Cowboy fans are chirping and saying, oh, well, the Eagles are frauds. Just wait till we get you again. And then you lose again. So you've been punched in the mouth twice by your two biggest rivals in the entire NFL. And tempers are obviously running high because the team doesn't know how to lose because they don't lose games. There's one thing sure in the National Football League over the past 2 years. It's almost a virtual guarantee that the Eagles are going to win a game on Sunday because their record with Nick Sirianni and Jaylen Hurts since 2022 has been better than anybody else in the National Football League. And I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that they lost to teams they didn't want to lose to. There was a big-time emotional investment into both of those games, and when you emotionally invest and then lose, people get frustrated, and then pair that with the fact that these guys don't know how to lose. They have not lost. They at all. A.J. Brown hasn't lost as a Philadelphia Eagle. I mean, literally, they only win football games, and I think they're trying to struggle through some things here and learn how to lose properly, and my only hope is that they figured it out. And this is truly the week where they're buttoning things up, and this is truly the week where they have a really good week of practice, and everything looks proper, and they go to Seattle, they handle their business, they win by double-digit points, and then you can cruise the final 3 weeks because DeVito's not going to beat you, and the Cardinals are trash, and then you're going to be the 1 seed because the Niners have 2 hard games left on their schedule, and both the Baltimore Ravens and the LA Rams, and the Cowboys have 3 straight, starting with at Buffalo, then they have to play... Who's that? Who's that next team? Who's after Buffalo?
The Lions.
No. The Lions is the 13th. Miami. 3
Lions,
straight.
Yeah.
They're losing at least one. And if they lose at least one and we win out, the East is ours and the 1 seed is probably there as well.
Yeah. That's true. We definitely have an easier schedule. I would argue, like we were talking about before, with the turnover issues and the player execution.
Yeah.
I don't even think that we can count as crazy it is. I mean, DeVito and the Giants and Arizona, I know we've owned them, but honestly, you saw what happened to the Packers, right? They turned the ball over so many times. You give a team a chance to the Titans, shocking comeback to Miami, and it was ridiculous. So I think we will win those. Let me just make sure to make that clear. But with the way that we've played and not taking care of the ball, if all of a sudden we're sitting there going, oh, wow, we've had 3 turnovers this game and we don't have any for the defense to be able to catch up with, then all of a sudden you're in a dogfight. And if before the season, I was like, hey, we're going to obliterate the Cardinals. Jonathan Gannon's just going to get it handed to him. I hope that that's what we do. But you better believe that the squad there is going to be like, oh, we're coming into, coach's old house here. Like, let's try to do something. So I don't know. It's much easier, certainly, schedule wise than you talk about Dallas, but it's also not, I don't think a cakewalk of just go in there and, hey, we're going to win this thing, because as we've seen, if you slip up and all of a sudden have these mistakes, we lost to the Jets with Zach Wilson. I mean, they got good defense, but you don't have any business really losing to the Jets with Zach Wilson. Let's just be honest. So, I don't know. I think that we will be okay. I do feel like we can get this ship back on track. We can say, hey, you beat Seattle, you get it rolling a little bit, and maybe you find a little bit of a groove, some physicality, some intensity. I think it should also be mentioned too. I mean, Sirianni admitted to, the what was it, like the tiredness, or the fatigue that came into play. At first, his answer, it's so funny because if you listen to it, this, and a lot of people that watch the press conferences know this. If you listen to Sirianni's first answer to anything you ask him, it's not the truth. Wait until he talks it out for about 3 minutes, and then you'll get what the truth is. Because he literally says, hey, do you think the team's tired and fatigued? No, they're professionals, blah, blah, blah. 2 minutes into it, he goes, yeah, I should probably give them a little bit more time and, let them recover, their bodies get ready and all this other stuff. So it's like, okay, so you do think that they're fatigued in this. And so that's another key element too, that, everyone's mentioning. I am not a believer in making excuses, but I'm just saying, when you look at this schedule, this gauntlet, the teams that you played, the extra rest that they had, all that comes into play. You're going to get at least a healthier, or maybe a more full, complete version of this team. And hopefully that intensity and that physicality returns with it. So that's kind of my, silver lining, positive spin to it. But I
There you go.
expect we'll see a little more from that side, at least, hopefully, anyway.
I hope so. Now, listen, when we talk about the Seattle Seahawks matchup on Monday night, it's not a cakewalk. I know I've been saying I think the Eagles are going to win by double digits. That's because I think the Eagles are extremely motivated and understand they can't really lose this game if they want any shot at actually hosting a playoff game in 2024. Obviously, January and February. But Seattle's still a good football team. I'm not trying to take anything away from them. If I'm DK Metcalf and I'm Tyler Lockett, I'm Noah Fant, I'm licking my chops because this secondary has been getting absolutely exposed by anybody and everybody that has any sort of, single brain cell of knowledge in terms of offensive scheming and how to go ahead and pick apart a soft zone defense that Desai has known to run. But I do think that the Seattle secondary is really, really susceptible, especially at the safety spot. I think the Seattle front four is not as good as it has been, and their linebackers are old. They're very similar to how Philadelphia is built, and the fact that they don't have as good of pass rushers as we do, but they have a couple of secondary pieces, but they don't work really well together. You saw Dak Prescott carve them up last time we saw them a couple of weeks ago, right? Like the idea that Philadelphia should be able to go in there and play their offense and dictate with running the football and passing and get A.J. Brown the ball and work it up and down the field is pretty obvious. I think it should 100% happen, and I'm very confident heading into the Seattle Seahawks game. Now, Seattle needs it, sure, but this is a team with more than 6 losses, a team that has been exposed time and time again against good passing attacks like the Cowboys were a couple of weeks ago. I feel very, very confident that they're going to beat the Seattle Seahawks. Where are you at on that?
I think so. Like I said before, I'm maybe not quite as optimistic as you are, and I know that you're saying it's not a guarantee, but I do think that we win. Just until they prove it to me that they can actually play a complete game or a semi-complete game of football. I know there's, maybe one-ish, possibly 1.5 if you want to call it that. But still, it's like, I just need to see it. It's going to be a hostile environment. It's going to be Monday Night Football. We'll see, I guess, who the quarterback ends up being. So that could drastically change it. But still, it's a big game, like you say. I mean, they really need this. And so, I would just question what team shows up, as long as the team that we hope that we've really expected to see for most of the season. If you play a complete game, then I mean, heck yeah, you should beat them by 15 points. But we saw Dallas, like you mentioned. I mean, Dallas should have, depending on penalties called and stuff like that, they could have very easily lost in their home building to Seattle. So they're no slouch. It just kind of depends on what you get out of the defense. Can they make just enough stops? And then can the offense take advantage? And let's remember too, it's worth pointing out. I mean, the Seahawks are going to give you opportunities. Like, they are one of the most penalized teams in football. So you're going to be able to take advantage of that. And I hope that that's where we see, but like we were talking about here in the open, we don't need to go in here and just expect hey, let's take a deep shot. Let's just go for home run hitters. Take what the defense gives you. I really am hopeful that Jalen goes into this. He's watched the film now to say, we don't need a 40-yard completion to AJ or Devontae every time. Even though that route may be there and it's a chance, let's just move the ball down the field. We got to get ahead of the sticks here. And it feels like way too many times where all of a sudden, oh, well, there's another 3rd and 11. We got to make a big play here. It needs to get easy. We got to get back into, hey, we run the brotherly shove a couple times every single drive. We just get an automatic first down, run the football. Maybe they change some things up there. But I do think that we win. I will say that on the record. I'm confident that we do. It just feels like, which team are we going to get there? And that's the one that I'm waiting to see.
And making the offense easier really needs to be the focus this week. And that starts with Jaylen Hurts. It doesn't start with scheming. It doesn't start with Nick Sirianni. It's with Brian Johnson. They're always trying to make the offense easier. A lot of the route combinations that they run have a deep shot paired up with a nice crosser. And the problem is that Jaylen Hurts is not trying to dump it off to the nice crosser. He's not trying to look for the back out of the backfield. He has A.J. Brown, wants to get A.J. Brown the ball, and will do everything possible to get A.J. Brown the ball. And guess what? It works a lot of the time. For 6 straight weeks, it worked for 125 plus yards a pop. I mean, it was almost automatic. But defenses realize if you stop A.J. Brown and you force Jaylen Hurts to decide between throwing it to double covered A.J. Brown and taking wide open people underneath, across the middle, he more often than not, in big games where he knows he needs to score because his defense is horrible and can't stop anybody, like the Dallas Cowboy game, he's going to force some throws. And the problem is that while that's a problem, he still had a couple of unbelievable throws in double coverage that Smitty dropped, that Brown dropped, and then, of course, were fumbled by both of those players. And so it's really hard to sit back here and go, well, they might not win against the Seattle Seahawks if this happens, because that's true. But it's time for Philadelphia to prove to us they are still Super Bowl caliber, right? Because they were Super Bowl caliber up until the Niner game. They lose the Niner game. They're no longer Super Bowl caliber, but we still have high hopes because they should be able to rebound against Dallas. They go into the Cowboy game. They play even worse. They lose that game, and now everybody has just written them off as being a nothing burger team. They're still a something burger team. They're still very, very good. And you and I have said this both privately and on the air. The winner of the NFC is winning the Super Bowl this year. There's not an AFC team that scares you at all. They don't exist. Every single AFC team has major flaws, serious flaws. We can go through them if you want. But if you can beat 4 straight games, 4 straight teams, Seattle, the Giants, the Cardinals, the Giants, you're the 1 seed. You then will just have to beat 2 teams at home, and then you're in a Super Bowl, which you're guaranteed to win. Prove it to us that you guys can go ahead and do that, and it starts with Seattle because you're not losing to Tommy DeVito and you're not losing to the Arizona Cardinals, despite how many cutlet comments I see down below in the comment section.
Right. And I think we would be the 2 seed depending on San Francisco, right? Just to make sure
you said the 1 seed, at least one of their remaining games. They are going to lose one of those games.
Yes, I agree with you, but I guess going into it, I psychologically, I want to say that like if we went out 2 seed guaranteed, I would love to control our own destiny. But yes, you're right. Possibility, hopeful 1 seed. 2 seeds, not even terrible. But yes, you want the 1 seed if you can get it. Obviously, home field advantage and everything. But I mean, I'm with you. Like we talked about. You mentioned it. The AFC I guess we got a comment here of a couple people saying AFC is absolutely winning the Super Bowl. That's ridiculous. I think.
What?
I mean,
which team?
I don't know. Yeah, which team? Weedosaurus Rex says AFC is absolutely winning the Super Bowl.
Which
LOL.
team?
I don't know. That. Yeah, name that one out there because the way that the teams have played, you look at the losses, everyone's slipped up. Everyone's had a week or multiple weeks where it's like, what in the world are you doing? But so far, you look across the board, and I'm sorry, like we talked about it. Like there's not an AFC team that I go in there and go, oh yeah, that's going to be an absolute monster of a game, really, really tough. Like if you talk about what are the biggest challenges for the Eagles, and I know we've seen this, and you're going to get a lot of comments about it, but it's the Cowboys and the 49ers. Like I'm not near as concerned about an AFC opponent. And sadly, if the Niners or the Cowboys were to be able to miraculously get to the Super Bowl, I'm more confident in the Niners doing that because we know what the Cowboys do in the playoffs. But I would still favor them. Like I'd say, hey, they're going to win the Super Bowl. So I think that it's just an opportunity where you take advantage of the schedule here. Like you mentioned, we've got these 4 games. They should all be very winnable games. All of a sudden, hopefully we're controlling our own destiny at the 1 seed. At worst, we're 2 seed. And if you go through and look at that schedule, I mean, the possibilities of who you might play even as the 2 seed, it shouldn't be that difficult until you get to the NFC Championship game, at which point, you probably would be playing San Francisco in San Francisco. But the guys will be up for that game. And it's not going to be a repeat of what we saw in Philly.
Yes.
The guys would be up for that game. And that's it. Then you go to the Super Bowl. I mean, that is the opportunity. So all is not lost. I know we've talked about this for a little bit here, but it is frustrating. It's concerning. I was struggling for like a 2-ish days coming off of the loss. I'm not going to lie. Too. Today was the first day of kind of going through some stuff, looking at the clips like you were mentioning too with some film and going, okay, there's some struggles, there's some challenges, there's obviously things that we need to fix, but the sky is not falling. We can have some positivity and, get this thing back on track. So it starts with the Eagles beating the Seahawks. And I started a poll here in the chat. It looks like currently the Eagles losing is the top pick, actually.
Wow.
So there's a lot of pessimism in here. I know we've got some trolls I'm seeing in the comments, but still overall percentage, Eagles lose is 28%. Eagles win by 8+ is 27%. So it's right there. It's either Eagles lose or Eagles blow them out. So that's where we're at.
All right, let's go to some comments here as we're getting ready to go towards the tail end of the show. Fugly Gang, it's a good name, says, why do you think why do you think it's going to get better when Nick is being stubborn about play calling and philosophy on both sides of the ball? It's going to get better because they've won 10 games. It's going to get better because this team knows how to win and is going to figure it out. Does anyone in here think the Eagles are going to lose 3 of their next 4 or lose more than 2 of their remaining games or lose at least 1 of their remaining games? This football team put up a lot of points against the Buffalo Bills. They had a great defensive half against Patrick Mahomes. They beat the Dallas Cowboys in Philadelphia. They have proven to us that they can beat good teams. Like, there is always a team in the NFL. Vikings were this team last year with a bad point differential who had a really good record but couldn't beat good teams. Philadelphia has a good record. They have a bad point differential, but they've beaten good teams. They've proved to us that they can. If you're abandoning ship with 4 games left and the best team you play in the next 4-game stretch is the Seattle Seahawks, and if you win all 4, you're guaranteed the 2 seed and probably the 1 seed, you just can't abandon ship on them. Like, that's where I'm at. I believe that they can make changes, and go listen to my show today. Listen to what not only Jordan Mailata, but Dallas Goedert had to say when they were interviewed on WIP today. They seem very, very confident that things are going to be fixed. And again, you don't fumble the football 3 times against the Dallas Cowboys, that's a 1-score game in the 4th quarter. Now, they probably don't win it, but it's not a 20-point loss and a massive blowout on the national, in front of a national TV audience. They're 1 score away from beating Dak Prescott, and this entire narrative has completely changed.
Yeah, there's an opportunity there. Again, trying to be, optimistic here, and obviously talking about the possibility. But again, like you say, I mean, with a schedule, I think if you were to ask any team, no one's going to say this openly, but if they were truthfully to honestly answer it, I mean, every team wants the schedule that we have of the remaining 4. Does Dallas want the schedule they have, or would they pick the one that we have? Clearly, they would pick the one that we have. And so
yes,
you look at those and say, there's a lot of opportunity there. Again, it does come back to, you got to get things fixed. You got to figure some things out. But, you could go back and look. I know it doesn't happen every single year. We all realize that. But go back and look at teams that have won the Super Bowl. There's been times where teams all of a sudden just catch fire. So it's not impossible. I know that there's things that do need to get corrected, but if you can stay healthy, maybe Sirianni adjusts some things. We know that he's been, for all the things that we want to knock him at, he has been good at times of player management, giving them rest, not as many practices, things like that. Whatever the case may be, whatever it takes, get them back on track. Maybe they're feeling a little bit more fresh, and you go into it, win a couple games, get some momentum, some confidence, and then it's time for playoffs. And again, we all know the impact that playing at the Link can make. Those that have been there, certainly playoff environments, it's going to be different. So again, I certainly wouldn't say I'm out there betting the Eagles to win the Super Bowl or make the Super Bowl at this point. I'm not maybe at that level, but in terms of, hey, can we do it? I think that we certainly can. The season's not over. The season's not lost. There's hopefully going to be some corrections here, and the players got to start executing better, because it's also on them. It's not just on the play calling, as bad as it may be at times. I think we would agree with that.
Let's go through some rapid-fire questions in the comment section right now. Give us your questions in the chat. Andrew Nathan RPS says, after watching the All-22 film, Eagles were having no problem moving the ball against Dallas. Turnovers killed us. There you go. Again, you watch the film. The film was a lot different than just remembering on blind emotion how you felt whenever the Eagles were playing the Dallas Cowboys. Let's see. The Eagles have given me clinical depression, says Joe Mangoon. It's tough. Yeah, I don't know what the solution to that is. Watch Monday night, and it'll fix your depression because they're going to win. John says, love you guys. Thanks for keeping that pessimistic, self-centered without completely going off the rails. However, if we lose even 1 game to Tommy Cutlets, IDK, if you two can save me on that point. If we lose 1 game to the Giants, then I will admit that I'm an idiot, and you shouldn't follow me for Eagles news because I was completely wrong. So I will say that on the air.
Okay,
they're not losing to the Giants.
I don't think that we are, but again, hey, you go out with some bets and stuff like that. Obviously, people are gonna call you on that. But no, I agree. Sure. We're optimistic now, but if we lose to the Giants, I won't be optimistic anymore. I'll just tell you, truth be told, I will not be optimistic. I will tell you, the playoffs we are going to make, but we're not going to go very far. We might win a game, but that'll be enough. Yeah, I'll be in the same boat.
How about Randall says, Mott's crystal ball says we beaten Seahawks and Giants. Lamau, okay, Mott, how about you take 1 week at a time? Try effing winning the next game. Start there. I would love to try that, but I don't play for the Eagles, so I do not dictate whether they win or lose. But
we get to speculate. It's the beauty of it. They have the mentality of, hey, 1-0 every week. We get to speculate. We can say, hey, they're going to win this game, lose this one, whatever.
Josh, would you believe me if I would have told you that Eagle fans, through, 13 weeks, 14 weeks with a bye into the NFL season, that Philadelphia would have beaten Patrick Mahomes, they would have beaten Josh Allen, they would have beaten Dak Prescott, they would have beaten the Miami Dolphins, all those games, and yet, again, still being 10-3, that Eagle fans would stand here today and think we're going to lose to Tommy DeVito not once, maybe twice the final 4 weeks. Would you have believed me?
No, I wouldn't. There's a number of reasons for that. But I get that there's a little bit of, frustration, or maybe a lot of frustration. Yeah. There's some pessimistic mindsets out there, but I mean, I don't know. It's shocking, but I guess the thing that you can come back to and point to is we have the giant killer, right? We have the giant slayer in Boston Scott. So, even if you want to be really, negative about this and everything else, like, you know what? If all else fails, let's run Boston Scott. We know we've got that answer against the Giants. We're going to play Christmas Day and then play one more time too. I will say it. If we lose, I'm right there with you. It's for sure panic time. I will be very, very pessimistic, and I'll basically say, well, that's it. We could try next year, I guess. But no, we're not going to lose to the Giants. I really don't think so.
Randall said, someone tell Mott, if not for luck, the Eagles would give 6 to 7 losses right now. Ever heard of the Vikings 22? Ever heard of David Tyree and Mario Manningham? Don't talk to me about luck not winning you championships or winning you games. Welcome to the National Football League. People get lucky every single week.
Yeah.
We didn't get lucky against the Buffalo Bills. We won. We didn't get lucky against the Kansas City Chiefs. We won. We didn't get lucky against the Dallas Cowboys. We lost. That's what happens in the NFL. And the good teams win more than the bad teams, and the good teams take care of business against the bad teams, which is what Philadelphia has the final 4 games of their schedule.
And, hey, strange things happen, whether you want to complain about refs, whether you don't want to. I thought it was a little bit poetic or just kind of ironic by the fact that the Chiefs lost on a penalty that was clearly a penalty, but yet Mahomes and Andy Reid were complaining about it. Like, I get that, oh my gosh, that cost you the game, but like your dude in Kadarius Toney is literally lining up offside. So everyone that was like, oh, Eagles are whining about the Super Bowl because of James Bradbury in a hold and it shouldn't have been called and all this other stuff, but yet then they turn around about this game. So again, there's things that happen that are calls that are like, hey, that might be a penalty. Should it have been called? Maybe not. But there's a lot of luck element to it, or just being kind of right place, right time. And I'm not afraid to say, I'm perfectly fine with it. Yes, in the Kansas City game, did Marquez Valdes-Scantling drop a pass there? For sure. And should he have caught it? Absolutely. But it's not like MVS has only one drop on the year. Like, he's very much, I don't know if he's at the top, but I know the Chiefs are towards the top, and he's had several drops. So we were watching the one against Buffalo, and as we're talking about it, all of a sudden Patrick Mahomes throws to the side to Kadarius Toney when he's wide open. It's like, well, there you go. There's another drop. So it happens in the National Football League, and you've got to make plays and things happen. But yeah, I don't say that it's like, oh, we luckily, just all of a sudden beat these teams and, we're going to get whipped. We lost 2 games, but we also have wins against other teams that probably, they might be sitting there saying the exact same thing. So every single week, it's a new week. There's an opportunity here. Got to take care of Seattle. I'm hopeful that we end up seeing that. Daryl here says, do you think you're being too critical of Jalen? We saw what he did last year with a competent OC. No, I don't. I mean, I don't think so. Jalen holds himself to the standard, and he's talked about it every single week. And just about every single week, he said he hasn't played up to the standard. So, I mean, I understand that it's difficult with a first-year OC or kind of a change there. But like we were talking about, I mean, it's probably more so, I would argue, on Sirianni. But Jalen also got paid a ridiculous amount of money, well warranted. I think he's going to and will continue to be the player that we expect him to. But still, he got paid a ridiculous amount of money to be that player. And so is he getting critical, or is it warranted with the criticism? Absolutely. When you sign a contract like that, it's one thing if you're a guy off the street, like if Danny DeVito goes out there and plays bad. Well, hey, it's Danny DeVito. Everyone understands that. But if Jalen Hurts does, he's got to take the brunt of it. I'm sorry. I keep calling Danny because I did with the movie. But
I think I did.
Yes, with Tommy DeVito.
Yeah.
So yes. But with Jalen and the criticism there, again, at least he takes it. I mean, he'll sit up there with the press conference. He'll say, hey, it's my blame. I got to get better. I got to improve. So, he's with it. But are we being too critical? I don't think so. There's not a question in my mind.
There isn't a Blankenship update, Miles. I saw you've asked that like 80 times. There is no Blankenship update. In terms of Jalen has been 2022 Jalen for about 80% of this year. So the whole idea that you're being too critical of Jalen Hurts because his new OC is ridiculous, because Jalen Hurts has been fantastic for the vast majority of dropbacks that he's had this season. Plus, he's probably been a lot more injured than we thought, right? Let's just be real about that. End of the year, we're going to find out that the knee was worse than it actually was. But 20% of Jalen has been worse than it was in 2022. Like, I think 2022 Jalen was 90% good, 10% bad. This year, it's 80% good, 20% bad. Still elite, still top 10, still great, still no issues, still has 10 wins. But it needs to be a little bit more buttoned up for that 20% to reduce the amount of criticism, because it's a swinging pendulum. Like, that's how it works. He's not been perfect, and the Cowboy game is a great example of him struggling more so than he should be.
Yep, I agree. China says, never let Eagles fans forget the fire Steichen his first year as OC. Give BJ a chance. I mean, that's true. I've talked about it a couple of times on the show. I understand it. First year OCs, they're going to get a lot of criticism. It's going to be some
Yeah.
growing pains. And also, how much was Sirianni stepping in there being like, well, hey, I want to run this. I want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
We said it a lot here, but I would just love with the remainder of the season in these games, Sirianni take a step back. Just see what Brian Johnson does. If you give him the reins and you say, I'm not going to give you 3 plays to pick from, you devise the game plan. I can see some of it. I can offer a little bit of insight, but do not micromanage because, again, I don't know of anyone in the regular workforce, and I don't know anyone really in any phase of life that does well with micromanaging over your shoulder. So let's see what he could do. That's what I would love to see.
And again, we forget that they didn't like Steichen for moments last season, and we forget the fact that they almost lost to the Colts, and they lost to the Saints, and they were struggling in the Bears game, but even before Hurts got injured. And, they gave a bunch of points to the Dallas Cowboys. Like, they had flaws, and they had flaws in 2017, especially towards the end of the season. And then Nick Foles didn't play well at all against the Atlanta Falcons in the divisional round, and then they figured things out. So every single team has ebbs and flows. Like they're real ebb and flow. They go through funks. They have issues. The Eagles are not fundamentally flawed. Their fundamentals have been flawed at times. And if they can clean that up, if they can play a little bit better, they're going to be just fine. And it goes to the comment here. D-Kit says, how worried are you about the age factor at some key positions, both for the rest of the season and going forward? The team looked worn down to you from the brutal schedule. Yes to all of it. The age will be a factor. Cox is not coming back. Kelsey's not coming back. Byard will not be coming back. Who else am I thinking here? BG will not be coming back. Julio Jones will not be coming back. Not that it matters. Lane Johnson will come back, but for what, 1 or 2 more years? Like, there's 6 starters, maybe 5 if you take away Julio Jones. There's 5 starters who are not going to be coming back, and there will be more. You will lose people in free agency. Bradbury is getting up there in age. Slay is getting up there in age. They are going to have a very, very, very interesting offseason with cap space. They have ability to go and sign people, but also with the NFL draft, and you will expect Nolan Smith to pop in year 2. Jalen Carter to really come along in year 2. Sidney Brown will have to start here in year 2. Reed Blankenship will need to be a leader in year 4 or year 3, whatever it is. Age for sure is a factor, but it's not too much of a factor to where they should not be able to win a Super Bowl this year.
Yes, you know that I'm expecting that, especially from Nolan Smith. Anytime you bring that up, he's going to pop in year 2. We're going to see that, and hopefully a little bit more in this last stretch, right? I mean, if we can play some controlling games, you get him a little bit more reps, maybe some more confidence. We can see a little bit of a differentiation there. You saw me almost jump out of my seat whenever Nolan was about to get Dak Prescott. So if we can get a little bit more, it's going to help all the guys because, we talk about it here. And I know the argument with the question there of, is age a factor? Are they tired, fatigued, and all that? Sirianni said yes. He said no, but then he ended up saying yes by his explanation. It's a multitude of things. Last season, and it's easy to say, comparison based on last season. Last season, the number of games that we had that were over by the third quarter was ridiculous. So, of course, the snap total is going to be down. Of course, you're going to say, rotationally, Desai's playing the starters a whole lot more. They're close games. Like, you're going to keep your starters out there more often. So I don't think it's as much of a schematic like Desai's ruining this and he's destroying it. It's you're in these tight games. You're going to play your best players. There's still a rotation. It's just not as much. Now, if we can control a little bit more, play solid in these last couple games, get the guys to play a little bit more often, and have that rotation, we're going to be so much better for it. You're going to see fresher legs. You're going to see guys that are playing with more energy, more swag, making plays. We just got to get to that point. And that complementary football that we talk about, we haven't seen, as we all know. So if we can get to that point, limit the mistakes, it's going to look different. I'm not saying that I'm not even getting close to promising a defense that's top 10, top 15 even. I'm just talking about if we could get maybe even top 20 on these remaining 4 weeks here, it's going to be night and day difference and have the offense play that complementary football too. I'm optimistic. I think that we're going to be okay. We just got to get this team healthy and rested and get more guys in that rotation, certainly leading up into playoffs. So we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay.
There you go. All right, we're at now. We're going to wrap up here right now and go ahead and sign off. Of course, subscribe to our shows. We got plenty more shows happening next couple of days. We'll be live Monday night back for our broadcast we normally do for Monday Night Football. And I think you're going to see a much better Eagles team, and let's hope that that's the case. But again, stay tuned for our shows. You missed this one, you can replay it, and we will see you guys in the next one. Before, though, no one just threw a super chat. We got to mention it here. I think the main concern for me is the way we lost both games. Just looked like we had no interest in winning. IDK, if it's fatigue or what. We talked about that a lot. Fatigue, I think, does play into it, and they do seem a little bit disinterested or at least just not as motivated, but I think that changes on Monday night, Josh. I really, really do.
I agree. You're going to see a difference. Players are motivated, like you talked about. They're getting a little extra rest too. Sounds
Mm-hmm.
like Sirianni's comment, but also even Fletcher Cox had mentioned. I think he was on with Zach Berman and Bo Wolf,
Mm-hmm.
but talking about how going to get a little extra time coming off of these games. So that may have been a point from Sirianni already to tell the guys like, hey, it won't be, as difficult, as tough of
Yeah.
practices. Obviously, you have the extra day naturally with the Monday Night Football. But I think there's an emphasis there. So I would agree. You're going to see a different team. The group is going to play better. And I don't think we're going to have to worry as much about the fatigue coming into play.
There you go. All right. He's Josh Davis. This is Josh Davis of the Philly Special Show. I'm Thomas Mott. We sign off. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Go Birds.